Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Brahma Bulletin. Thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate you one and all. And now, let's take a look at the week that was. UFL Rules Revealed. The United Football League released its rules for the 2024 season, building off the shared legacy of XFL and USFL. The UFL has adopted several innovative rules from both previous leagues. The UFL has adopted the XFL's points after touchdowns option. Kickoffs will resemble the USFL's more traditional style play, with a modification moving the kickoff line back to the 20-yard line. Some of the 2024 UFL rules highlights. Points after touchdown. Teams will have 3 scrimmage plays. They can either be run or a pass option following a touchdown. From the 2-yard line, a 1 point for a successful try. From the 5-yard line, will give you 2 points for a successful try. And from the 10-yard line, will get you 3 points for a successful try. The kickoffs will look like a more traditional college and NFL kickoffs, but will take place from the 20-yard line of the kicking team. A kickoff out of bounds will give possession to the receiving team 30 yards from the spot of the kickoff or at the spot where the ball went out of bounds. A kickoff that is untouched by the receiving team may only be recovered by the kicking team up to 20 yards from the spot of the kick. So some of the other kicking touchback rules: all touchbacks on kicks, punts, or kickoffs will be placed at the receiving team's 25-yard line. Any punt that goes out of bounds inside the receiving team's 25-yard line will be considered a touchback and placed at the 25-yard line. Non-kicking touchbacks will also be placed at the 25-yard line. Alternate possession options. While onside kicks are allowed at any time during the game, teams will have an alternative option to retain possession in the fourth quarter. If a team is tied or behind during the fourth quarter, it may elect to retain possession after a score with a 4th and 12 from its own 28-yard line. 2 forward passes. Teams will be allowed, as they were in both leagues last season, to throw 2 forward passes on one play. The ball cannot cross the line of scrimmage at any time prior to the second forward pass being thrown. Catch definition. A completed catch or interception is defined as a player securing control of the ball prior to the ball touching the ground and touching the ground in bounds with both feet or with any part of the body other than his hands. Defensive pass interference. Defensive pass interference will result in a 15-yard penalty or a spot foul if the foul occurred less than 15 yards downfield. Intentional defensive pass interference will result in a spot foul if it is beyond 15 yards downfield. Replay reviews. Designated members of the officiating department may stop a game at any time before the ball is next legally put into play to review a play if the play is reviewable. There is reasonable evidence to believe an error was made in the initial ruling, and it would have a direct competitive impact on the game. These reviews will be made from a secure location separate from the site of the game. Any call or non-call related to player safety is also subject to review at any point during the game, as well as any officiating ruling in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter or overtime that is obviously incorrect and will have a significant impact on the outcome of the game. Coaches' challenges. Each coach may challenge any ruling, including fouls or potential fouls, one time during the course of a contest, provided the team has a timeout remaining. A successful challenge will not result in a loss of a timeout, while the timeout is lost if the challenge is unsuccessful. Overtime. Overtime will consist of alternative or alternating attempts to score from the opponent's 5-yard line with no kicks allowed. It will be a best-of-3 format or until a winner has been determined. On February 18th, the UFL and the San Antonio Brahmas held a fan event at the Alamo Dome. At the fan event, there was prize giving away to a couple lucky fans. There was merchandise. There were ticket giveaways. There were rides and games for children to play. It was a great event for fans to come and meet the new head bull of the Brahmas, Wade Phillips, and also Daryl Moose Johnston. Now, while at the event, there was not a whole lot of new information revealed. It was mostly just a meet and greet where Daryl Johnson did kind of go over some of his thoughts of and uh, what was going into the minds of the decision makers when coming up with the rules. They also promoted that fans could come out to Arlington to watch practices to get more involved in the teams. Fans were able to ask four questions. There were four questions provided by the fans. Um, it wasn't a whole lot going on at the actual event. It went pretty quickly. There was maybe about 500 plus fans there. For me, I was there, and personally, I thought the fan event was mostly an ability for us fans to come together, to meet one another, to greet one another, to get to know your fellow fans, and also a good chance for us to make friends as well. Because I truly believe that this community of fans that we have, the San Antonio Brahmas fan group, once you meet fellow fans, you can establish long lasting relationships and friendships, relationships that will transcend football itself. There's been a lot of people who have testified on Facebook and whatnot that is how they met. They met at fan groups, at tailgating events, at events like the fan event yesterday, and are now friends and have continued those relationships uh, since the meeting. Last year, the fan event was a great event and met several people, and those people I'm still in contact with today. And I think that the fan event we had today is just the beginning of a lot of great friendships. So it was a wonderful event, and if you were there, I hope I saw you and I hope I got to say hi to you. If you weren't there, uh, maybe the Brahmas will have another fan event. I think they will. Last year, they had it at Alamo Draft House, which was not too far from my house. They had the head coach, Hein Ward, there, and they also had several players for meets and greets and whatnot. For this fan event, it was just the head coach and it was just Daryl Johnston. It was just mostly them talking with just those couple fan questions. There was no players really that you could meet. I think there was one player that was out in the fans section, but other than that, it wasn't your typical meet and greet the team. So that's why I'm thinking that there will be another event once training camp starts and we get the rosters more set up, and then they'll come back down to San Antonio for a fan meet and greet. So if they do, I hope to see you there. Let's go over some updates. All right, so the roster updates, there has been a lot of movement when it comes to rosters because, as you all know, that the roster had to be cut down to 75 people on the 14th of February on Valentine's Day. And the Brahmas at the time last week had over 93 players, I think. So here are some of the updates. Wade was offensive lineman Haggai, Chisholm, and Debussy. And I greatly apologize if I slaughtered that name. Now, funny thing about him is that he was just signed maybe a few days prior to the announcement of him being waived. Next one is quarterback Jack Cohn, who was our starter from last year. Now, there will be a lot of people that was celebrating and dancing in the streets when this was announced that Jack Cohn is no longer on the team. Me personally, I was a fan of Jack Cohn. I thought he played much better toward the end, but I wish him the best of luck. Next was quarterback Kurt Benkirk. Now, this is not surprising because he did announce on Twitter a long time ago that he was stepping away from the game to do a more kind of like Madden type of thing. So it was surprising that he was even protected, but now that he's been released, that's not surprising at all. Running back Kalen Balaj, he did suffer a season-ending injury last year. He was the leading rusher in the XFL the first 2 weeks of the season. As a matter of fact, he had more rushing yards himself than the rest of the running backs in the entire league combined had after 2 weeks. But he did start to struggle a little bit before he got his injury. So I was kind of surprised to see him waived, but considering the injury, I guess that might have played a big factor in him being released. Running back Marcus Cooper has also been released. Wide receiver Juan Carlos Santana, wide receiver CJ Windham, offensive lineman Joe Crawl, offensive lineman Quinn Osland, offensive lineman Luke Juriga. Now, I personally was very surprised to see him waived because he was the only offensive lineman to play every game last year. I mean, the Brahmas Bulldozers were absolutely decimated by injuries. We lost three, I think, of our starting linemen the very first game of the season, and Luke Juriga was the only one to play every single game. So him being released was very surprising to me. Also released defensive lineman Malik Dorton, defensive end Michael Scott, defensive end Darius Morange, defensive end Michael Kennedy, linebacker Lorenzo McCaskill, linebacker Nazir Wright, linebacker Trevor Harmonson, who was a UTSA guy. It was kind of sad to see a local kid be cut. Defensive back Dylan Thomas, defensive back Gavin Robertson, defensive back Micah Smith, and kicker Chris Dunn. Also departed was defensive lineman Armonte Carey. Now he was claimed an IFL combine, but he was left unprotected in the UFL dispersal draft, and he is now signed with the IFL San Diego Strike Force. So he is now back in the IFL. So some of our milestone updates. Training camp is coming up. That is February 23rd and the 24th. The first round of training camp roster cuts to 58 personnel is to be done by March the 10th, and the final roster cuts to 50 personnel is to be done by March 23rd. Again, the UFL season starts March 30th, and the Brahmas season opener is March 31st. And that's it. That's the video. Thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you found it informative and entertaining, please let me know by hitting that like button. Also, if you have not done so, please consider subscribing to this channel. I appreciate you there. And while you're at it, would you please consider going to alternativefootballnetwork.com. That is alternativefootballnetwork.com. There you will find a list of all the contributors that we have part of the AFN family, such as my channel, Horns Forward, we have Analyze and Educate, we have Shading Network, we have all kinds of people out there who write articles and contribute videos. It is a great website for your one-stop shop for everything alternative football. So please check it out, alternativefootballnetwork.com. All right, well, I think it's time for this Brahma to be put out to pasture, at least until the next episode. Until then, San Antonio, horns forward.